everyone. Thanks so much for taking the time to be here. It's really good to see a lot of you spending some time in your morning. My name's Avi. I'm one of the members of Free the People, Western New York. I'm just going to be introducing why we had this press conference, and then I'm going to pass it on to our esteemed speakers. So from the very beginning of this coalition, we have been very clear with our demands for accountability and systemic change in the Buffalo Police Department. And from the very beginning, we had 13 very clear demands, which I will read off right now for anyone who is unfamiliar. This is also on our website, freethepeoplewesternNewYork.com. And we have a bunch of really great speakers to speak today more about what we're going to be these demands and all their campaigns that we've been fighting for. The recent police reform agenda that came out is really inadequate and does not meet our demands. And from the very beginning, these have been our 13 demands. Riot police should stand down. Peaceful demonstrators should not be escalated with militarized force. We demanded that we should fire police officers with a history of brutality and killing people. We demand to make officers pay for settlements with their pensions, not taxpayer dollars. We demand to create an independent external oversight body with subpoena power. We demand to move away money from the police budget and into reforms and community supports. We demand to increase transparency of police policies, activities, and cameras. We demand to end biased traffic stop practices and eliminate unfair fees. We demand to implement LEAD to reduce arrests driven by mental health, substance use, and poverty. We demanded to adopt Carriel's law to create duty to intervene. We demand to give community a seat at the bargaining table. We demand to update BPD use of force policy and codify it into law. We demand to get police out of schools. And we also demand for resolutions in support of repealing all of state laws proposed by the Black, Puerto Rican, Hispanic, and Asian Legislative Caucus. These demands have not been met, and we demand more. And now I'm going to hand it off to Tanvi to facilitate this session. And for all our esteemed speakers, please keep in mind that Denise is going to be our timekeeper. She will tell you when you have about a minute or a minute and a half left to speak. So please look for Denise's timekeeping. Thanks so much, and good morning to all.
Thank you so much, Avi. Hi, everyone. My name is Tanvi Piert. I work for the Partnership for the Public Good as the Just Recovery Coordinator, and I am also the Buffalo Lead Working Group Coordinator. So just before we get started, I just have like a few things to say. And on June 12th, 2020, Governor Cuomo signed an executive order requiring all local governments across the state to create a policing reform plan. This order came after the murders of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd. As the world mourned Ahmaud, Breonna, and George, the city of Buffalo made headlines after police knocked Martin Gugino to the ground during a protest, resulting in a brain injury. The result? A grand jury voting not to indict the officers involved. Before Martin, there is Quentin Suttles, who was repeatedly punched in the head by police while restrained during a traffic stop on Mother's Day, suffering a fractured orbital bone and shoulder blade. The result? Charges for Quentin, but no charges for officers, and no scheduled court date almost a year after the incident. Before Quentin Suttles, there was Wardell Meach Davis and several others killed by Buffalo police. With all eyes on Western New York after the murder of Daniel Prude in Rochester, Buffalo made headlines again in September after police shot Willie Henley twice in the stomach while responding to a mental health call. During this month, Mayor Brown announced members on his Commission on Policing Reform and Social Reconstruction to improve policing and its impact on the most marginalized communities. And 6 months later, we finally get to see the fruit of their labor with only a few days to respond to the recommendations. With all that's happened and continues to happen in Buffalo, reforms must go beyond incremental progress as the community contends with bull raps, more financial investment in policing, and the Buffalo Police Union suing the city because the state decided disciplinary records should no longer be secret. And spoiler alert, they lost that case. During these times, we must ask ourselves if we are genuinely doing enough and if what we're settling for will restore our communities or force the next generation to end the cycle of trauma. Recommendations in this current draft resolution include ensuring all BPD officers are compliant with existing policies and practices, performance evaluations, community input and proposals between the city and the police union, leads implementation, reimagining police presence in Buffalo public schools, and more. And today, we're going to talk about these recommendations with several community organizations, organizers, and advocates fighting for the tomorrows our communities deserve to live today. As a reminder, you have until 11 o'clock today to send your public comment using the information that we are going to put in the chat. And so let's get started with our first speaker, who is Mike Powell from the Buffalo Police Advisory Board.
Yes, hi, my name is Mike. I'm a board member with the Buffalo Police Advisory Board, and the board finds that the commission's recommendations on police reforms are a disservice to the people of Buffalo, and they also fail to incorporate the detailed research-based recommendations made by the existing PAB over the last 3 years. This includes the creation of a true independent police oversight structure, which the PAB originally called for back in June of 2020. In our policy brief recommending a new oversight model based on months of research and community input, we detailed why the city needs a new oversight model and how we as a community can get there. None of our recommendations were incorporated, and the PAB was never consulted or interviewed for input. The PAB was formed by the Common Council in part to conduct research and propose policy regarding Buffalo police reforms. As a result, as a board member and a resident of Buffalo, I am left with several questions regarding some of these recommendations. For example, as it stands today, the BPD's de-escalation policy does not clearly and explicitly prioritize and detail the appropriate circumstances in which specific de-escalation techniques should be used or the techniques themselves, nor does it specify how critical thinking skills should be utilized when considering using force. And yet, the Commission's reform recommendations only calls on the BPD to give officers a reminder to follow these policies, like the duty to intervene, banning chokeholds, and de-escalation techniques in the field. For one, these recommendations do not include any mechanism to review how and when officers are reminded or any accountability measures to ensure that the officers actually do comply with these policies. Secondly, as stated in the Commission's report, officers are being reminded to comply with policies which are in need of reforms themselves, like how de-escalation techniques are incorporated, something the PAB outlined in length in our use of force policy brief. In addition, there is complete omission of mental health diversion recommendations, specifically incorporating 911 diversion models over co-responder models, as a report only mentions utilization of the behavioral health team as a policy reminder to officers. I believe, and the board believes, that the people of Buffalo deserve better. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mike. And now we're going to go to Whitney Walker with Voice Buffalo.
Thank you, Tanvi. Good morning. The Commission's report claims that it is reimagining. We, Voice Buffalo, the interfaith community-based organization that stands boldly for racial justice and equity, say that the time for reimagining is long past. It is instead time to be architects of a new Buffalo and to collectively, shamelessly, and unapologetically denounce white supremacy in all of its forms within our policing systems. Accountability should not be a respecter of persons, particularly when it comes to police accountability. We need external, objective, and accountable oversight of our police. so that when an officer has been investigated 22 times by internal affairs for alleged misconduct, they are suspended without pay and terminated rather than considered for promotion by the Police Benevolent Association, as was the case with Officer DeLong. Therefore, we, Voice Buffalo, demand that the Buffalo Police Advisory Board's model be codified into law, giving them the power that they deserve to objectively review misconduct and hold officers accountable. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Whitney. And next we're going to hear from Dejan Hall, who's going to speak about a very important police ballot initiative.
Good morning, everyone. Once again, my name is Dejan Hall, and I'm a member of the Buffalo Police Accountability Ballot Initiative Coalition. And I want to start by saying that I firmly believe that the solutions to problems come from those who are closest to the problem. And for the past few years, we have heard overwhelming calls for independent police oversight. The commission recommendations that have been put forward by Mayor Brown's commission call for a reimagining of the citizens' rights and community relations governmental body. Unfortunately, the process drawn out does not coincide with the sort of calls we've seen from the community, and it does not take into account that the reimagining has already been done. The Police Advisory Board put forward in June 2019 or 2020 a new independent oversight body, and we're going to push to get it on the ballot this November. We are asking folks to visit voicebuffalo.org/ballot-initiative and sign on to the call for a police oversight body. We are asking folks to drop by either Intersection Cafe, the law office of Stephanie Adams, or Kari's Cafe to sign on to the petition. The time for reimagining is long over. And one of the things that should have happened is we should have reimagined the way that we approach problem solving. Instead of convening a commission of folks who are aligned with Mayor Brown, we should have had a fair and open process so we could have heard directly from the community. That did not happen. But the ballot initiative gives us a path forward, and it shouldn't be limited to policing. I pray that everyone looks up municipal home rule law here in New York State and begin to think about other ways that we can address these problems instead of having controlled boards determining the fate of citizens who are being ignored. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Dejan. And next we'll hear from Felicia Brown, who's from Black Loves Resisting the Rest.
Good morning, everybody. I will start by calling the names of Wardell Meach Davis, Rafael Pito Rivera, Jose Hernandez Rossi, Marcus Neal, and the countless others who have been killed, traumatized, and brutalized by this Buffalo Police Department. It is alarming that this agenda does not lead with a decrease in the Buffalo police budget, which is nearly 1/3 of the entire Buffalo City budget. We need a reallocation of those funds into community programs, housing, and roadway infrastructure, among many, many other things now. While we are grateful that Mayor Brown is finally implementing LEAD after years of advocacy, we also ask for the city's specific investment in the program, as we know it will need significant investment, and that money must be reallocated from the Buffalo Police budget. Further, Buffalo Public Schools Superintendent Kreiner Cash stated on February 10th that he ended the practice of off-duty officers serving in Buffalo Public Schools. But here we have the mayor just over a month later floating the reimagining of police in Buffalo Public Schools as police reform. How many studies do we need to show that police officers in school buildings do nothing but criminalize Black and brown youth? How many more of our children need to be engaged in the criminal injustice system before we say enough? Lastly, increased community interaction with police officers only means more harm in communities. Increased community interaction only means that there will be more arrests and more brutalization. It means that more families will be separated, more children will be without parents, and more Black and brown people will enter the carceral system. We do not need more police in our community. We need a cut to the Buffalo police budget. Cops who have brutalized and killed people in our community need to be terminated now and their pensions withheld, never to be rehired. We need police accountability. We need police out of schools, and we need police not to respond to cases of mental health or any mental health cause. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Felicia. And so next we are going to pivot to James Hill from Vocal New York.
Hello, hi, you hear me now? My name is James. I am a leader of Vocal New York in Buffalo. I want to tell you about my little incident that on police picking on people on having small packages, which happened to me. I've been arrested with a small amount of drugs, and I was harassed by police. And I did some time for that, which wasn't right. You know, I think they should stop the police harassment and for I'm trying to name the thing out. Just for having not enough drugs on you to be arrested with, like I was, you know, for a small amount of drugs, you know, for harassment from the police department, you know, you got to do time for it. It should stop that at all. Put an end to that. Put an end to police harassment and for having a small amount of drugs in your possession. It should stop that at all, you know. So I'm passing on. That's all. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you so much, James. And so our next speaker is actually going to be myself on behalf of the Partnership for the Public Good. And that is a very important segue when it comes to low-level drug offenses. And so for several years, the community and organizations have been calling for an alternative to business as usual policing. About 80% of arrests across the country are for misdemeanors or low-level offenses. In 2019 in Buffalo, nearly 60% of all arrests were for misdemeanors, with low-level drug offenses accounting for 29% of those arrests. With LEAD, a pre-arrest diversion program that focuses on harm reduction instead of punitive action, we have the opportunity to lower the number of people cycling in and out of the system, reduce recidivism, and address harm that does not involve court or a jail cell. As the Buffalo LEAD Working Group Coordinator, it is exciting to see the program's inclusion in the recommendations as it takes a trauma-informed approach in addressing the root of behavioral health issues instead of just the symptoms. It is also great to see performance reviews for officers and an increased public input in Buffalo Police Union negotiations, as many have been calling for these reforms for years. But as an organization with over 300 community partners, including those who reside in some of the most over-policed neighborhoods, PPG would be remiss if we did not amplify those concerns. These recommendations simply do not go far enough to protect communities most harmed by the systems in place. At a time when many are looking for transformational change, reforms that keep police in schools and take incremental steps to create law enforcement accountability barely move the needle. The city of Buffalo has the opportunity to be a leader in addressing police violence, and the justice system or lack thereof, disparities as it dares to do so, if it dares to do so, sorry. Our partners highlight ways to put community first in our 2021 community agenda that includes removing police from frontline response to mental health crises, implementing a new police oversight model, permanently ending the practice of stationing off-duty police officers in Buffalo public schools, and investing in just streets, not enforcement. We call on the city to continue the change process in the months ahead, despite New York State's April 1st deadline to adopt police reforms and advance the systemic reforms proposed by our community organizations. And so thank you very much. And so next we will be going to Janelle Brooks from Slow Roll.
Thank you so much. I'm Janelle Brooks, Board of Directors for Slow Roll, and we thank you so much for allowing us to engage in this space and offer our thoughts on this very serious topic and what the Buffalo Mayor is proposing. Slow Roll Buffalo's mission is connecting communities by bike. Fulfilling this all-inclusive mission was made more difficult by the city-imposed police presence on our rides in 2015. As we were growing quickly and while we share their primary concern for safety and having maintained a respectful relationship with BPD, the lack of trust in Buffalo police, especially among the communities of color, led to distrust of Slow Roll by association. This latest resolution on police reform once again falls far short of fixing this lack of trust in Buffalo police. Slow Roll stands in solidarity with the coalition of community organizations demanding better for Buffalo. This draft falls short and does not at all include detailed information about the allocated resources or the necessity for allocated resources regarding the support that is needed to truly address what's needed with police reform. In conversation, I've likened this draft to a corporate apology, which starts with, if I offended you, knowing that there are very specific things that have caused issues and continue to cause harm to individuals that live within the Buffalo community. And it just simply falls flat. It does not allow at all, and as stated at the beginning of this call, it does not address the demands and the true issues that are related to community members and the ways in which Buffalo police negatively impact our engagement. As stated, Slow Roll stands behind the organizations related to this, and the timeline given for individuals to respond definitely reflects how the lack of engagement from the community was kind of pushed to the side. And we will do whatever it is to continue to bring light to this reform draft and ensure that individuals are able to chime in and be able to provide appropriate feedback so that we can truly see some changes within the city of Buffalo.
Thank you so much, Janelle. And next we're going to go to Jerome Wright, who's with the Campaign for Alternatives to Isolated Confinement.
Thank you, Tanvi. While many people will invariably focus on the length of this report, I want to focus on the content. And I believe this content tells us that nobody has listened to the community from which this reimagining is supposed to focus on. The fact that it is unconscionable to think that the fact that a white 75-year-old man who was peacefully protesting the deaths of Black and brown people in this country was thrown aside like a rag doll by police, and there was no recourse for him or this community to seek redress other than go to the courts, that the mayor nor the police took into account what happened and did what they should have done, shows us that any reimagining will be redoing the same thing. It is time to stop the same old thing. It is time to do what many across this country are beginning to do. It is time to do something that says to this community that we value the Black and brown bodies that inhabit this community, the Black and brown bodies that give Buffalo its vibrancy, its cultural diversity, its impetus for other people to come here. Right now, this city is on the brink of losing more people than it ever will because it has failed to listen to the people who are here now. It is high time that this mayor, this police commissioner, listen to the people it is unfortunate that we still feel in our community that Black and brown communities are policed and patrolled while the other communities are served and protected. It is time to serve and protect Black and brown communities like you serve and protect those others. And the only way that is going to be done is to sit down with the community as you say you have done, but not to sit down and listen, but to sit down and do what we are asking you to do. No more excuses, Mayor Brown. No more excuses, police committees. No more excuses, anybody. Change has got to come, and it has got to come now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jerome. And so next we're going to go to Samantha White, Esquire, co-chair for the Minority Bar Association of Western New York Criminal Justice Reform Task.
Thank you. The recommendations that the Buffalo Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative report, I'll start over. The recommendations in the Buffalo Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative report fall far short of the substantive change needed to establish equal justice under the law in Buffalo. The extreme brevity of the report and the apparent lack of input from the community and the public also raised serious concerns about the process through which this report was generated. The report does call for some things that community members, activists, and policy professionals have called for, such as the implementation of LEAD, a commitment to include a permanent residency requirement for BPD officers in bargaining negotiations with the BPA, and the expansion of public input into those negotiations. However, some of its recommendations, like the one calling for the city to reimagine police presence in the Buffalo schools, are ridiculously out of step with what the community has demanded. Just last month, Superintendent Kreiner Cash of the Buffalo Public Schools made a welcome commitment to stop the practice of employing off-duty police officers in the Buffalo Public Schools after years of pushing from various pastors, community leaders, the Minority Bar Association, and activists. The collaborative's recommendation would move us backwards into an environment that would criminalize Black and brown children, and it should absolutely not be implemented. Also, it's disturbing that members of the community were not invited to participate in the collaborative's process, despite clear language from Governor Cuomo instructing them to do so, to hear from stakeholders and members in over-policed minority communities. We know that the collaborative had at least one lengthy presentation from law enforcement, yet not a single presentation from a victim of police brutality. The Minority Bar Association wasn't invited to participate, nor was the Buffalo Police Advisory Board. Even the Common Council, who had members in the collective, were, according to a statement from one of the council members at this week's legislative committee, they were kept in the dark about the process for these recommendations. And once the recommendations were released, the public was only given 3 days to comment. That's a far cry from the inclusive consultation mandated by the executive order. Finally, I'll reiterate, the collaborative's report is notable for a lack of substance in general. While other reform and reinvention task forces around the state, such as Syracuse and Erie County, generated reports that were hundreds of pages long, Buffalo produced 4 pages. This suggests they completely lack the attention to detail that is vital for the substantive and effective reform that Buffalo needs and demands. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And next we're going to go to Carrie O'Horn.
Hello. Okay, just like in Georgia, we saw that once you learn the game, they change the rules. And that is one reason why I came up with Carrio's Law. Carrio's Law is, of course, the duty to intervene, which will protect officers who do stand up for the public. And one thing I do agree with is that we are over-policed. So one way to stop being over-policed is to stop the court payments. If you stop paying officers for going to court for arrest and traffic tickets, you will see that it will go down significantly. And one thing with Carrio's law that they did not include in the city when they did adopt a law was they did not include a registry. And I think it's important to include a registry, and that is exactly why I think it should be a federal law, because if someone leaves Buffalo and goes to Rochester, there's no registry. They can get on that department. If they leave the state and go to another state, they can get on that department. Because for whatever reason, some people are allowed to resign, or it's covered up, which we know about the cover-ups. And PBA is part of the problem and part of the cover-up, because they take on the cases of the bad officers, as we see in Marty Gugino and Quentin Suttle's case. They protect the bad officers who become supervisors, who protect other officers, and the cover-up goes on and on and on. It's all common sense. It's like if you're thirsty, you drink. If you're hungry, you eat. So if we're over-policed, we need to defund the police. So it's all common sense. They're violating our civil rights and our right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So we need to vote. And doesn't matter who gets voted in, we just hold their feet to the fire. Anyone who gets voted in. I mean, I'm not saying who to vote for or anything like that. I'm just saying whoever is in there, they get their feet held to the fire so that we all can live life in the pursuit of happiness, right? That's it.
Thank you so much. And next we're going to go to Vicki Ross with the Fair Fines and Fees Coalition.
Thank you, Tanvi. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you for arranging this. And I guess we thank the city for putting together this plan. But I want to say it's very disappointing, certainly in terms of the Fair Fines and Fees Coalition. Nothing that we have asked for has been included. I'd say, first of all, that the regressive taxes on people who can least afford to pay it, that was happening through the exorbitant fines that had been included, those have been removed. And that was a great victory. That happened before this recent resolution. That was old news. And we were glad and grateful for it. But now they've been replaced by the cash grab through the through the speed cameras at various schools that are primarily in communities of color. So that is another cash grab, again, on the backs of people who can least afford it. Those cameras have been proven to be unreliable. They've been going off at different times, and the data is very hard to refute, even when it is wrong, and it has been wrong. So that is a move backward. Another thing that Fair Fines and Fees Coalition has been working on is the Just Streets initiative, so that there is design, not enforcement, so that we can make it easy for people to do the right thing and hard for people to do the wrong thing, by putting turnarounds in, by making various design-oriented changes to our streets that will encourage people to slow down. So those things could be done, they should be done, but they're not included in this plan, not at all. No mention, of course, of the cameras either. And lastly, as far as the data goes, we have had the Stop Receipts program in effect for some time, and it has not resulted in the kind of information that we were supposedly going to be given. So now there's all this plenty of language in the very short thing about the police, the PDI, and there's no reason to think that we're going to get more information than we have been getting just by giving it another name. I want to just say a couple of things that have not been said. The only deadline in this whole document was the deadline for us, the public, to have a tiny little window to comment. As people have well explained, people were not consulted. This thing has been going on for months. I want to say half a year or more. There's been no consulting the public. So when there's a lot of mention or protest in this very short report that we're going to be consulted, why would we believe that? because we've not been consulted up till now when this was meant to be put together with our input. Again, there are things that we have urged, and this is actually not so much for the fair fines and fees, but other groups that we've been involved in at the Western New York Peace Center, the Western New York Agents for Change. We have worked hard to say, you know, when vast majority of calls are not for criminal matters, let other people be the responders. This has been a setup for the police and the public, that things we go down the wrong way because the very presence of a police officer will escalate things. So we need specialists who are mental health professionals, people who are skilled in peaceful conflict resolution to help with those issues when they come up. So all of that has not been included. And back to the last, I just want to mention again, keeping the police officers out of the schools, keeping guns out of the schools. Those police officers are our own presence in the schools that are not making our schools a peaceful place. So it is very inadequate, very disappointing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And our final speaker will be Christian Parra from Citizen Action to close us out.
Hey y'all, thank you all for coming. I do want to say thank you for coming today and this morning. As a person that's on the commission, I'm actually very disappointed in the fact that there was things that we did recommend very strongly on the commission. For instance, the Ebola rats is not a solution for mental health, mental illness. Those are things that are going to hurt our community even more. Also, the fact that, once again, like everybody else said, I feel like the community's input was not actually heard. We did some events on the east side and west side to try to get community input. That was not listened to at all. I don't even think it was actually put on the recommendations, which was actually sent to the whole entire commission for them to read what the community said. Our communities are not safer. There's no accountability in this to put on police. It's just like a very sad moment for me as a person that was on that commission, because I do want to see change. And once again, I feel like the commission was not heard. If anything, the police were heard more on those calls than the actual people on the commission. And it's now on the city council to take in these recommendations. We demand that the city council do not accept these as resolution, but to actually think about how do we implement real change. I know Wyatt made a statement, and I hope that everybody steps up to tell the community that we are not going to put up with the accountability that the union and everybody else is not putting on the police force that keep hurting brown and black people, young individuals. The school to prison pipeline is here. And I'm just hoping that we actually find real resolution from this press conference. And I hope that Mayor Brown does hear us, because it is time for the community to be heard. So everybody, please, 11 o'clock is the deadline to turn in your recommendations today. That means we have 49 minutes before they actually close the session for recommendations from the community. That is not enough time just for a couple of days. I'm hoping that everybody turns in some type of recommendation from people that was hurt. It is time for unity. If we don't unite at this moment, there's no pressure for the commission to make any change, and no resolution. So I just hope that people understand, and I just want to like put the quote out there. What do you want to be remembered for? Because Martin Luther King and Malcolm X dedicated their life to the struggle. And I hope that people actually make decisions to stop the struggle here in the city of Buffalo. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you so much. And so before we wrap up, I wanted to open the floor because I know that press is here. If press has any questions, feel free to use the raise hand button in Zoom. And if you can't find that, then you can add your name to the chat. So then that way we can call on you and a whole bunch of people aren't trying to talk over each other. Okay, it looks like I don't see anyone with a raised hand or questions. And so another idea that we had is to just hold space right now. We are done with our speakers. There will be a formal press release that will be coming out soon that we will distribute. As well as this recording, we can have some clips sent out as well. So I just wanted to thank everyone for coming and also hold space. We might have some music for folks to be able to send in their public comment. And actually, I see Catherine, go ahead.
Yes, one of the things that I noticed about after the George Floyd shooting, I did a lot of research about police brutality and the way that they police our communities. And one of the jobs that a police officer is supposed to do is protect the community in which they serve. But one of the things that I found incredibly striking is the fact that 40% of people who have been convicted of domestic violence claims are actually police officers. So I'm wondering how we can ever trust police officers to serve and protect our communities when they clearly don't have any regard for the safety or welfare of their own families.
That is an excellent point. I believe that if we did further research, we would find out that people with the most alcoholism, substance abuse, domestic violence, suicide are all a part of that fraternity. And it is because of when you visit harm, hurt, and pain on others, it will reciprocally come back to you. And that's what we have with this police force. And you're right, if they can't serve and protect their own homes, how on God's green earth can you expect them to serve and protect people outside of their homes?
I like
Go ahead, Vicki.
Yeah, thanks. I'd like to add too, when people are trained in violence, then violence is their go-to thing. When they talk about, oh, we get de-escalation training, that's in our use of force. That is not in the use of force. That is in the use of not using force. That is a whole nother discipline that should be separately. So with our military, who are also trained to kill, when people are trained to kill, they're going to use violence. And when people consider it a success, when you're got 10 men out there standing there in freezing weather with somebody half naked there and for hours, and you cannot de-escalate them, and you don't even think of offering them a blanket or anything or some kind of idea that is a success. Even when they had a mental health, that was their mental health treatment team, right? I forgot what they're calling it, but whatever they're calling it, it doesn't work. They weren't they're using force because that's what they're trained to do. And that's why it makes sense that they would be violent at home, violent in other places, violent with each other, having fights. We have all kinds of records of this. They are being encouraged to use violence, and it is moral injury to them. That it's not good. Violence begets violence, and we have more and more violence when there are too many police out there trained and with their license to kill. Thanks.
Thank you.
I want to recommend the Dylan song, License to Kill. Just listen to those words, they'll say a lot. Thanks.
Thank you.
T, can I just add?
Go ahead, Avi, sorry.
Just from the perspective of a mental health professional, cops and other first responders are more likely to die by suicide than to die in the line of duty. Mental health is a big issue for first responders, just as much as it's a big issue for the city of Buffalo. And, we understand that, this system doesn't work for anyone. And we need a systemic change and accountability for everyone, both for the health of our community, which has to come first, and also for the health of these first responders. because right now the system isn't working for anyone, and domestic violence is just an expression of mental health and other issues that has to come at the root of the problem. And so we're concerned about the mental health of everybody in our community. And, you know, we have to keep that in mind.
Thank you so much. And with about 42 or so minutes left before the 11 o'clock hour, that is the deadline for public comment submissions. We want to thank everyone for coming. Thank you so much to all of the speakers who lent your voice to something that is so important, that will have major implications for our communities, and those who continue to be directly impacted and the most harmed by the systems in place. And so again, thank you all for coming to our press event. We will be sending out an official press release with some more information as well, and have a wonderful rest of your Friday and a good weekend.